to welcome all of our viewers to this event, which is organized to form part of the Week of Italian Language in the World. This event is promoted yearly by the Italian Cultural and Diplomatic Network in order to promote the diffusion of the Italian language. The theme for the 20th Week of the Italian Language in the World is Italian between word and image, graffiti, illustrations, and comic books. I would like to firstly thank both the Embassy of Italy and the Italian Institute of Culture for inviting the Open Window to take part in this event. To start off our evening, I would like to invite Paolo Cuculi, the Ambassador of the Embassy of Italy, to please address us as a welcome.
Thank you very much. I hope that you can hear me and see me. I'm still not that expert on WebEx platform, but anyhow, welcome everybody. I'm particularly pleased to introduce this panel discussion. As you may imagine, we all, and I for one, would have loved to have this conversation in person, but it's an historical period, so consider all yourselves invited as soon as the health situation will allow us. So I'm very glad to introduce, and first of all, I'm very grateful to Open Window for partnering with the Embassy of Italy and the Italian Institute of Culture to celebrate the 20th edition of the Week of the Italian Language in the World. And as you have heard, and as you may know, the theme for this year is the Italian between words and images, graffiti, illustration, and comics. Personally, I found this topic particularly intriguing as I belong to a generation that grew up in Italy devouring inter alia comic books and graphic novels. And altogether, they are an important component of our shared cultural heritage, if I may say so. At the same time, I'm convinced that it is extremely interesting to assess how this form of art has evolved and has been evolving in an era which is dominated by internet and the social media, and how this form of art continues to interact with the Italian language. By the same token, I believe that in a world that it is every day more interconnected, artists who produce comics and graphic novels are facing, to some extent, an unprecedented challenge in the way they are able to handle this powerful tool of expression. Because today, more than in the past, artists have to carefully weigh the impact of their works that can be thought-provoking, moving, amusing, but by the same token, they can be inflammatory or offensive. So it is a very difficult balance to reach. And we are well aware of all the debates that have been spurring worldwide on this subject. I'm particularly pleased for this reason to have the Italian artist Emiliano Ponzi with us tonight to lead the discussion. And his CV that includes the cooperations with the best known and prestigious international newspapers and brands and companies. His CV is too well known and too extensive to need any introduction. So I welcome him warmly. I look forward to greeting him in South Africa in person. And I will follow with great interest the debate that you're going to lead. Thank you so much.
introduce you to our guest speaker, as Paolo has already introduced, Emiliano Ponzi. Based in Milan, Ponzi's illustrations have been described as bold, textured illustrations that employ repetition, a judicious use of lines, strong graphic compositions, and the use of conceptual metaphors to define and communicate the concept at hand. His illustrations appear in advertising, magazines, books, newspapers, and animation for clients that include the New York Times, Le Monde, the New Yorker, and many more high-profile platforms. It's an honor to be able to have a discussion about your practice this evening, Emiliano. I would also like to introduce Micah Bakker and Nina Tor, who will be hosting the panel discussion following Ponzi's short keynote address. Micah Bakker is the head of school for the School of Visual Communication at the Open Window. She's a practicing artist and illustrator and has also received critical acclaim for her practice. Bakker started exploring illustration alongside her fine art practice in order to be able to discover a new, lighter, and more eclectic approach to her work. Nina Tor is the subject manager for illustration within the School of Visual Communication at the Open Window. Tor's work explores mental landscapes inhabited by characters pursuing a journey of sorts. So we are honored to be able to host this event this evening. To those that are joining us, please enjoy it. Emiliano will now start us off with a brief keynote introducing us to his practice and process, which will be followed by a panel-style discussion led by Nina and Micah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I'm honored to be here. I want to thank you all for inviting me tonight, and it's a pleasure. And I'll try to do my best. First, with a promise, a short keynote where I talk about how my practice is and how the process behind the product that you see on magazines and advertising and book covers is. So what stands behind that, I guess, for people who wants to practice in illustration and in visual art is the most important thing. So like seeing what's hidden behind the product. I want to thank the Italian Cultural Institute, the embassy, Mr. Cuculi, and again, I hope you enjoy this short keynote. And after that, we're gonna start like a panel of discussion with Maika and Nina, and enjoy. So I want to start with a sentence that I always loved, and it's a sentence from Pablo Picasso. Inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. So I kind of like, I started like 20 years ago with this job. And in 20 years, I produces around 250 images per year. So the total is like 5,000 images. And that's that's impressive on my side, thinking about that. And everything I got, like out of my job in these last 20 years, is that everything starts from the chaos. Everything is chaos. And what we try to do as visual artists, illustrators, graphic designers, is looking for a direction, looking for direction. So where we are headed to with our style, with our view. And so I guess that the most interesting task we have is being able to synthesize the complexity of the world, because like the world is a really a complicated place. We are discovering in this month more than ever, probably. So what we have to do, like drawing, what we have to do drawing is try not to banalize the complexity of the world itself. And the goal that I always try to do is to find my unique perspective. So my own tone of voice, my own angle. What is and what is the angle I can see the world through. That is my unique skill, my unique vision. And so I try to, I try to working day after day. I try to understanding the process, my own process behind the product that I was doing daily in order to create a magic formula. And that's a paradox because there is no magic formula at all at the very end because everyone has his own magic formula. What matters is that it works at the very end. Yeah. Sorry, Crystal, what? Excuse me? Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry, guys. I can fix this immediately, or you want me to keep going? Sorry, guys, for these like technical issues. Um, sorry about that. Gonna be. Let's try this. I can. Uh, okay, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay, guys. Here we are.
The notes are extremely interesting in any case.
Yeah,
so
but
I don't think they do
don't like
any
it
harm
because
to the presentation.
but I'm gonna spoil the next slide, so I'm sorry, like that you see those. Um, okay, let's do that. Let's do that because I don't want guys. I don't want to spoil these slides. So let's start over with a blank page. Oh, so what is the blank page? The blank page is the zero moment of every image creating process. And it scares me a lot because you know that out of any blank page, we can create beautiful image or like two bad drawings. So we have to fill this blank page, and the white page can be filled just with two elements, ideas and designs. So that's the content of the page, where ideas is, of course, the message we want to communicate, and the design is the way we want to communicate that specific message instead of another. And they, of course, work in combination every time and in proportion. Sometimes we can have like a very important idea in our illustration and with a minimal design, and otherwise we can have like a less interesting idea, let's say so, with a beautiful design that hypercompensate the lack of the idea. So let's start with like a very simple example of uh, an idea, an image based on an idea. So what I want to communicate. Let's take this image of mine from my archive. It's a very simple image. You can see that the design is not that
Emiliano,
rich.
we can't
Yes,
see your slides. We can only see
you can.
your monitor screen.
Did I? No, I didn't stop. I am still presenting. I'm sorry, guys, for
It's
all
no
these technical.
problem. This is what happens.
Yeah, that's live. So let's try again. Okay. What about now?
There you go. There we can see it perfectly. Thank you.
And they say always that the error is human, but I don't think so. The error is on the computers now, guys. It's not my fault. Sorry. So let's keep going. So I was saying, like idea and design are the two items that we use to fill the blank page, and that's the content of the blank page. Idea is the message, and design is the way we convey that specific message. They work in combination, and they work in proportion too. Sometimes we can have like an image based on a very important, a very strong idea with a smaller design side. Otherwise, we can have, well, a beautiful image that tries to hypercompensate the lack of a very strong idea. So I was saying, I want to share just a couple of images because it's strange, like to talk about images without showing images. So idea is communication goal, what I want to communicate through an illustration. Very simple image from my archive is a guy, a baseball like young guy, trying to catch a dream, try to catch a star instead of, like the baseball ball. So the design is very simple here, like 2, 3 colors maybe, just a few straight lines for the net, and a very simple design of the boy here, because the message is really strong. So I needed to leave room for the message in this case. Same for that image designed for the New York Times. The message is so strong, like this crazy street, um, the crazy streets that becomes like an obstacle for the woman, that I didn't really know to draw a lot of background stuff. So clouds are very simple, like designed by the use of flat colors and just 2 colors, the blue and the light yellow. And then there is another scenario where how I draw, how I convey the illustration is more important than the content itself. So consider ourselves in this case like a movie director. We have to build a scene and we have to understand the use of every element contained in the scene. Um, so that was like the studio of painter Francis Bacon. And there isn't really an idea here, just the fact that his studio was a mess. And so that's what I did. I created a messy studio with a lot of paint. He used like walls and the door and every surface basically to mix colors. This image too, that's the Los Angeles airport. And I didn't really needed to, convey any message more than the beauty of a sunset, the California sunset, the buildings, the plane taking off or landing, and the mountains in background. So you see, like uh, there wasn't any request of designing a concept, designing a message. Well, or let's say so, a message, an easier message can be conveyed by just by the use of colors and lines and an atmosphere. So I was saying that the method, I was saying that I try to analyze the process behind my images, and I needed to start from the method. So rules, disciplines, because those words and those practice are basically what built a workflow of every artist, every illustrators. So let's take this example. This is like an image I've done for the New Yorker. And I start with, like a very quick drawing, of course, in black and white, to understand, as I was saying before, all the elements that needs to be on the stage. So let's think about like a movie scene, think about theater stage, like we are building the scene. So what can be contained in this scene? And every element contained in this scene needs to have a purpose to be there. Other than that, we can take that out. And then I built slowly the image, giving the right attention to every part of that image. And just at the very end, I can arrive to the colors. Just when every line, every part of the composition is already built, I can arrive to color the image, because other than that, it's very difficult to manage all the elements, lines, volumes, colors, faces at once. And same example here. That's like an image from a book I done like 2 years and a half ago for the MoMA Museum in New York about the New York subway map. Again, sketches, refining the sketches, well, let's some version of the final image and then the final image itself. It is a rational process. It's not just a matter, like people thinking at artists, illustrators, they think it's just a matter of emotion, but there is a lot of rational thinking here. And in every image you probably see published. There was the cover I mentioned it before of the book I mentioned I've done for the MoMA New York in collaboration with the New York Transit Museum, because it was a book about um, the map built designed in 1972 by Massimo Vignelli, very well-known Italian graphic designer. And I gave myself to do this book 2 simple rules. The first one I call the leadership of the shadows. So the whole book was built starting from the dark side of every volume. You can easily see here, like on the left, a colored final version, and on the right, I took out everything but the blacks, the shadows. And you can still understand, like you can still read the image. That's why that's the reason why I try to I show this like 3 different steps to make you understand that rules is very important, and it's very important that we stick to the rules we gave ourselves. Again, another example here from the same book, just black, the blacks and the whites. And even if I took out all the colors, all the, like the gradients, we still are able to read the image. Because at the very beginning, I said, hey, Emiliano, I just want you to use the shadows to build every volume in this book for this specific project. And the other rule I gave myself was the diet of the color, because like colors are beautiful and there are so many variations of every tone that we can end up like losing our mind managing with all the colors that exist in the world. So for this book, I decided, Emiliano, just stick to this rule. I want you to use a muted background, like a background color. I want you to use the New York subway map colors. So those use were used to design the subway stops and subway lines as accent in every image. So never as a dominant colors, but just as accent. And that was very helpful because this rule, but I got that later, helped me a lot to focus the attention of the reader just on very important elements. Take this image. That this is, I guess, LaGuardia Airport in the 70s, and there is an American Airlines plane over there. And the American Airlines logo was designed by the same designer, Massimo Vignelli, who have done the subway map in 1972. So I needed people to immediately look, understand, and recognize that logo. So in this case, the rule of diet of colors helped me very much. And then another thing that I discovered is that we can just do the best, keep an ongoing dialogue with our images. So we keep manipulating our images, doing, undoing, and redoing the same figure, the same background, because there is always a better solution. That's a selection, that's a cover done for a magazine here called Internazionale. And this is just a selection of version that I've done on my own. I mean, they didn't ask me for change. I just thought the first, the second, the third, and the fourth versions weren't that good. That was the final one. Same here. I started with like a color palette, and then I adjusted that completely. And that's very interesting case too, because it's still from the same book, The Great New York Subway Map. And here everything was done, but those lines that you can, those colored lines that you can see. And the scene is Well, it's very easy. Like the secretary of the guy here, Massimo Vignelli, the designer, I mentioned it before, she was opening the door and telling him, "Hey, you got this assignment. You have to, like you have to design the subway map for the MTA for the city of New York." And so, let's suppose I needed to find like a visual metaphor able to convey this, like scary moment, but also exciting, but also try to express that we were talking about the subway map, the subway lines. So I needed to try and try and try. So that's what I did. I tried with these like doodling lines, colored lines, another version, another, another one. I'm a little obsessive with like find the best solution. So I kept trying and yes, and trying again and trying and try. And yes, when I found this one, I thought, oh yeah, yeah, you are a genius. Like the finger, like pointing the finger in the designer direction was a genius, like genius, brilliant, great idea. Like after like 3 seconds, I understand it was like probably the worst idea I ever had. So I kept looking for the good one, and then I found the very best one at the end. So this shape of a subway train, that was the perfect solution because it has lines, it has like the shape of the train, so we can suggest lines and train, so the context. Plus, we have the red light, so it, those are a sign of something like a danger, something dangerous. And that's what I was talking about before when I stated, well, this is a rational job. It's not just a matter of intuition and creativity without any use of rational tools of our brain. Another thing I learned is that if we challenge ourselves, we can evolve, we can learn new things, and we can we can become better, a professional, better artist by doing so. That's why I challenged myself with virtual reality. It was a pretty new thing. So I put this helmet on and I took these, like joy pads and I started uh, drawing with, uh, well, sorry, whoops. Well, it's not working, guys. Again, it's not human fault. It's a computer fault. Anyway, what's supposed you to see is just a video from the inside the helmet, and where I'm designing all these universes. You can easily find if you're curious about that on my website emilianoponzi.com. Just checking the Pirelli brand um, uh, post, and you're gonna see that. So and again, challenging. So trying to something new is also um, well, it looks video are not working, guys. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening here. Oh, sorry, guys. I tried to exit. Okay. Yeah, yeah. I don't know why. Well, you can also see now, guys, that my desktop is a mess. So let's try again. Let's see if it works now. Oh, yeah. Now it works. So, okay. It's supposed to start. Come on. Start, please, please. It doesn't want to start. Let's see if these videos want to start. It's a luggage. I designed it for Mandarina Duck brand, so it's a completely a new thing again. I try to show you from here. If Keynote wants to work, but it doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Anyway, everything is on the website. I don't know why it's not working. And anyway, and that's a fake, metro card we designed for like the presentation of exhibition regarding the book I mentioned before in Bologna. So we created all these subway cards that was given to people to invite them to the opening. And we built this, like subway train, exactly designed as you saw it on the cover. And the exhibition was inside the museum, inside the car here. There was another exhibition I did many years ago in Rome, based on a very famous hotel that is in New York, and the Standard Hotel. And that hotel, well, I don't know if you've ever been there. It's on the Eye Line, and it's very famous because it has these transparent windows, these open windows. So there is a sign at the entrance of the hotel for guests, warning them that if they walk naked in the room, people can see them, especially during the night, from the street. So it's pretty famous thing. It's a thing in New York. So we created this exhibition and we recreated this hotel, and people could look at what was happening inside this gigantic wooden box. We recreated an hotel building, like phase building, with all these rooms. Uh, and in every room, it was happening something dirty or nasty or like, a little crazy. We called Sunrise Hotel instead of Standard Hotel, but well, the connection was pretty simple. Um, Again, we are changing country and we are changing project. It's like the window for Bulgari brand in Tokyo. And I did something that I've never done before. So like designing the windows, designing the curtains with gold, and another series of objects that were inside the windows. I saw there's a video that is not working again, so I try to go ahead a little bit. Um, Technology is really against us today. Anyway, the concept of all these example I'm showing you is that if we are able to talking about language, because it's the Italian week of the language, like if we learn more words, can create more sentences at the very end. And if we are able to create more sentences, we are able to communicate better with the other people. That's true talking about the language, like the spoken language, but also talking about images. If you are able to manage many techniques to stay open regarding what we want to communicate, yes, blah, blah, blah. That's the old video that it actually is working. Go figure why. I don't know. That's our tool. That's our power. Being able to communicate to the others, because that's the only goal we have to do as visual artist, illustrator, or graphic designer. And the goal for me at the very end is being able to create timelessness images. So I don't want to be like slave, let me say so, slave of the illustration trends, but talk about illustrations, but every trend are in every visual discipline there are trends. So I don't want to follow the pack. That's the only other video that's working and it's curious too. So that's why again, even if I never worked with vector software like as Illustrator, I was very curious like years ago about drawing with flat colors, flat images, very, very simple shape. So I designed a book based on the Dante Alighieri Inferno, just pretending to work with vectors, but drawing every element, because I was curious about that. Even if it was very popular, I didn't want to change my style to go in that direction, but I just wanted to taste a bit of that. And then again, trying to create something consistent was the project for the 85th anniversary of Penguin Books, where I tried to draw and write and draw like this children book, my first children book. It's a silent one too, so it was really difficult because everything supposed to be expressed just by the use of the images and the relationship between figures. Again, animation, posters, video that is not working, and me drawing. I don't know, guys, if you work using the computer or using traditional media, but I spend like, I don't know, like 10, 11 hours per working on the computer. So at a certain point, I really wanted during my vacation in the American West, so in California West, in California, Utah, all that part of America, I wanted to draw live. I know that I'm using an iPad because it was pretty impossible to use regular tools, but I try to use the iPad in a way that allowed me to just one layer, to use all the tools, pretending to not having possibility to undo the mistakes I was eventually making. And then, oh, it's working. Nice. This other video is working too. And so this is Sunset Boulevard, very famous street in Los Angeles. And I really try to draw as I was drawing with markers or colored pencils. And that opened a lot my mind because I didn't have access to all the tools that I use on the computer. We used, there was like a sort of a diary for the New Yorker magazine. They asked me, when they saw the first one, they asked me to keep a diary. I tried to go fast because I really want to go into the, to start the panel. Also because I'm tired just to hear my voice. So I tried to go a little faster. There was a swimming pool designed by David Hockney in Los Angeles too, at the Roosevelt Hotel. And anyway, everything was designed using using the iPad and probably trying to pretend to using regular and traditional media. And then it gathered a lot of attention, this project, in Italy and also in Germany and in America. And with my with my editor here, we created this box book in between, containing all these postcards, one for each place I visited, with also this small booklet on all the temperature, that the temperature of those specific cities I visited, and plus how many gas station stops I made and everything. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Sorry, I had some issues here. I hope you liked the keynote, even if videos weren't working. Thanks much for your attention and for your patience. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Emiliano. That was fantastic to see a little bit of your process. So I've got a couple of questions for you. One or two of them you touched on already, but the first one, which I think is in keeping with the theme, illustration is generally thought of as a universal language. But I want to know, would you say that your images are at all informed by the Italian language or heritage?
Yes, I think that well, if we are born in a country or in a city, we are shaped by the culture we have behind us. So the effort is, for example, to draw a car, not the car. So that's our effort. So beside our background and the place we are coming from and the family we are coming from and the culture we are coming from, we need to be able to communicate into universal way, because that's the only way that can allow us to, like, go ahead and be clear. Bye. uh yes.
Thank you for joining.
Great. Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks for elaborating on that point, Emiliano. I've got a question sort of just about illustration as a whole. So you already touched on some of these points, but I just want to find out what about illustration, or sort of what drew you to the discipline, and what about it do you find exciting or interesting, and what keeps engaging you?
Well, led well, as you saw from my presentation, discipline is really important for me, also because I think that every one of us has one way to do the thing in the best possible way. So that's really important, and for me, it's the only key to deliver a high level product. So that's to
Great.
easily answer to the question. Yeah, I am curious also to ask you the same question.
I
Because
think one of the things that I picked up in your presentation is that you spoke about sort of how one can approach it the same way as one would approach a film set. You know, you have the opportunity to establish a scene, and I think that is the one thing that I find extremely intriguing about illustrations, just that possibility that exists, and that is something I see you also sort of entertained in the presentation. But I think what is very exciting is to also then to balance out that possibility with discipline again. And I think that is very clear in your practice, how there's always sort of exploration, but then sort of clear focus and discipline that helps to control the image and to make sure that the image still communicates clearly. So it's nice to observe that within your work as well. Definitely clear.
because I think that, well, I learned that to communicate in a simple way or in a direct way, we have like to be aware of the complexity. So as you were saying, like, we have this scene, we have to build this scene. So maybe we are going to withdraw a lot of elements, and then we have to take them out because they are not necessary. So it's, I mean, I feel sorry sometimes to do that, but it's necessary because the main goal is always communicating in a clear way.
That is such a challenge, absolutely. And I think also how you managed, or how you addressed not being distracted by color too much. I thought that was also quite interesting. So yeah, great.
Yeah.
And then building on the social media angle, what is your take on consuming images or illustrations via social media?
Well, I think that it's happening to illustration what already happened with photography, like probably 10 years ago. It was a combination between well, when digital camera became very popular and high quality, and everyone started like taking picture, thinking, pretending to be a photographer. And I think that a lot is happening now with illustration and the social media. So everyone can draw like on a piece of paper and post uh, an eye-catching images on their Instagram account and getting maybe tons of likes, and that's fine. I mean, it's a way. It became a way as another to communicate, but it's and technology is helping very much because exactly as happened for the photography before. A lot of computer software are helping like to draw better than well that we are able to. I think it's fine. I think that we are consuming a lot of images, so the value, the average value of illustration on social media is very low because, well, we can, I mean, if you buy a magazine, you can keep watching an illustration, or if you used to buy a magazine, but on Instagram, it's just you look at the image for a second, just the time for a like or like reading a couple of sentences that goes along with the image. So I think so I ask myself, well, do you think it's good that social networks are spreading illustration? Yes. 50% yes, 50% no, because then a lot of people, I mean, the market, the hobbies and the professionals are like mixed together in the same place. And but that's life, so we'll see. But I suggest to everyone who is approaching to this job to pay a lot of attention on illustration in that they can see on social network, and try not to copy the styles they see, especially if they're very popular and they're very easy to replicate. But I suggest to build their own tone of voice and their own style, their own language, because that's gonna last forever, not the time of a like.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Do
thanks.
you use Nina? Nina, do you use like the social networks a lot
Very much
to
so, but
promote your work?
during the pandemic, I've become a bit allergic to it. But I'm sort of, I know that I have to return to it at some point. But yeah, it's a tool. It's a tool that one has to navigate, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, Emiliano, I think it's interesting how you also mentioned it's a place where everyone gets to access one's work, which is important. But easily illustration becomes sort of more about the visual expression, and the sort of coded messages in illustrations disappear because we just engage, or not disappear, but aren't noticed because we engage with the images so briefly. And that whole intentionality just sort of behind the image disappears then. So that's an important thing to address. I also want to sort of touch on your editorial illustration. I'm a big fan of your editorial work. That's where I first encountered your illustrations, and I think there's so much. It's quite difficult actually to filter the questions. I think there's so much to be said about them, but in general, when sort of working with editorial illustration, we work with what people already know. So you obviously spoke about the film set, and there we insert sort of particular clues for the reader so that they can make sense of the message or decode the message. How does that sort of working with what people know factor into your editorial process? Is that something you carefully consider and plan? Can you sort of reveal a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you. I think that, well, editorial, it's probably the more satisfying field of illustration because it's a complete process. Because, well, most of the time, uh, we have to read like a text on a subject that probably, well, we don't know much about that before approaching that specific assignment. So um, it's very interesting because we have to understand the subject, and we have to understand what people know about that specific subject. What is the average knowledge of the subject itself? And I think it's very fascinating because this is a process that starts always with words, so language, so like literally like underlining the keywords and trying to understand, giving a context to those words, and then from there try to build some ideas, very simple ideas, and with that ideas, try to build a new world. So try to take those words outside the context, and create a new context for the image. Sometimes it's very difficult. I think editorial is very difficult because people you work with in the magazines, um, sometimes they know more about you, more about what you know regarding the topic, and but other times they tend to, they want to convey, they want to go ahead with I don't know, let's say I produce 5 sketches, and they tend to go ahead with the one that is more easy to understand for a broader audience. And I get that. I mean, I understand that. But sometimes I think that, um, as many graphic artists, designers, illustrators used to say in the past, we in a way have the rule to educate a little bit the people to what is, um, what 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 is a good way to create images, a good way to read images, and we can push like people to stay on that illustration for more than 2 seconds to understand that if needed, maybe they can stay 5 seconds and they can understand something more.
No, I really like that because it's you're almost teaching people how to look at things while creating it, teaching people how to see things.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Yeah, my next question is something that's quite dear to my heart, and I mean, you mentioned the sort of rational, cerebral approach and constructing images, but I want to know to what extent the sort of unintended meaning and intuition plays. Do you ever create images that has meaning that you hadn't intended for?
Yes, because of course, it still is a creative work, even if I say we have to use a lot our rational side. Let's say that we have to use the creativity, the intuition at the very beginning of the process, and then it's more about rationality. I think that I try to create something that wasn't in my intent, because I try every time. So I created a lot of like really bad images, published really really ugly images, because I was trying to do something different, to step outside myself, to embrace a line, a combination of colors that were something new, completely new for me, and that put me for sure at risk of creating like something bad, because I was completely out of my comfort zone. That's supposed to do that with, not with when you have to publish an image, but maybe during the night, in when you come back home experimenting. But if you don't have time, the only time for experimentation is, the your work, like the publishing work. So, and that's exactly what I'm doing now. I'm doing like a couple of images very different from what I ever did, and that's challenging. That's scary. Luckily, there is time, so they're going to be published in 2 weeks, so I can keep working on those. But making mistakes, it's the only way to add a piece of our creative identity, to add a piece to our creative identity, to what we already know and what we already are able to do.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it's a conversation. The work speaks back to you, and you have to respond. It's great.
Yeah. What about you? Because I see that we can, I mean, we can think about this job as a brand, meaning delivering same same message every time, with same colors, same shapes, like, like a brand. Name a brand that you probably can. I'm talking also like a fashion brand or a car brand, and probably the values of that brand are going to be always those 3 or 4 values that characterize that specific brand. Or we can be something different. We can evolve. We can be like water, changing shape.
There is no formula.
There is no form. I don't know. What do you think about? I mean, being a brand is good as well. I'm not criticizing anyone.
Yeah, but it loses energy after a while. I think people start picking up if it's just a routine, if it's just a sort of task that you're doing rather than a challenge or something like that. I think it will lack something. But I mean, it also has its place. It depends on the job. But yeah, the process definitely has to grow. Needs that energy.
Yeah, I think, Emiliano, just to sort of quickly respond to that, I loved how you spoke about the fact that one always has to sort of develop, and that there isn't, like I said, repeated what you stated in your presentation, that there isn't a formula. I don't know if that's the exact phrasing you used, but I think that is very exciting. And I suppose that speaks to that thing of always discovering, and that again also touches on what we spoke about, what illustration, or the potential of the discipline itself that we sort of spoke about earlier. So I think that's another one, just this endless learning, and the things that you can never quite arrive at something that will always work. There's not just sort of one conclusion to something. But let me interrupt myself and get to my next question. I will lead it right back to editorial again, because like I said, I find it so fascinating, and I think it's such a, that relationship between image and text, there's so much to be explored there. And I'm wondering, as an illustrator, do you think, or I've got sort of a twofold question for you. First off, do you think illustrators have the ability to sort of persuade how people interpret the written text, and to what extent so? Because obviously there's a sort of certain, especially in print media, there's this particular sort of hierarchy in the layout. Usually in editorial illustration, the illustration is sort of the first thing that we see, and that's in sort of combination with the heading of the article. Is that something where you as an illustrator get to insert your own opinions and messages as well, to sort of persuade the reader and to sort of let them interpret the article in a particular way? Do you think that is something illustration can do?
Well, I'll tell you that probably like 17 years ago, I moved to Milano here, the city where I live, from like, I don't know, like 4 years or something. I just finished the school. And I was a very, very young illustrator, and I discovered that there was a conference just like 100 meters from my apartment, held by the photo editor of the New Yorker magazine. Well, the former photo, now she's gone. And so I sneaked inside, and I have this like postcard I printed with some of my early jobs. And I asked her the same question after the conference. Like, I tried to go close to her, like with the excuse of giving her this like postcard as a present, as a gift. And I asked her, I mean, what you just asked me. And she said, like an image as the only, something like, well, her sentence was better than how I recall it, but she said something like, every image has to complete the text. So it's something that goes in combination. I mean, text and images always go in combination. What I try to do every time is allowing the image to be like a single person, not like a couple. Let's say so. So what I try to do is let's create an image that can live on its own without the need of an explanation close to it. But yes, opening a magazine, or opening a website, the first thing, the quick thing you can understand is an image, and your brain can easily and quickly read an image than like 3 lines of text. So yes, the image affects the way that the readers approach to a certain topic, no matter what is the structure that it has. If a newspaper or magazine, like the support, it doesn't really matter. Also a book cover, also an image on a book cover affects a lot. Like, an image on the book cover affects a lot. Also the selling of a book, very much.
So judge a book by its cover, basically. Yeah, very nice. All right. My next question is, what role can ambiguity play in the editorial illustration context? Is that something that you deliberately work with?
Well, sorry, I didn't hear you.
To what role can ambiguity or sort of multiple meanings and things like that play in?
Yeah, that's like I guess something like a mind game, like the one to create more meaning, what it's called conceptual illustration. That was interesting, but I am a little tired of that, so I'm not using that thing anymore because it's supposed to be always super inspired to create those kind of metaphors every time. And getting old, like as I am doing now, uh, well, brought me to give more attention to the design, like exploring shapes, exploring composition, exploring perspective, rather than the message. That was, I mean, conceptual illustration, visual metaphors are a very good exercise. They were for me. Now I changed gym in a way, so I tend to another gym. So I I'm doing another sport. So like, but still, sometimes it happens. And then you know what? When I was doing that, like 10, 12 years ago, it was a pretty new thing. Now everyone is doing that kind of exercises. So I felt it was time for me to change. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry, that's just very interesting. I find a lot of people eventually gravitate towards some kind of abstraction as they move through their career, which sort of sounds like what you're saying. And yeah, I'm just curious how that happens, or why that happens.
I think that if, well, at least that's my truth. If you know you can do that thing, there's no way to replicate it forever and ever. You can move on. So that's the thing. Like you can challenge yourself with a different, well, I don't know, with a different something.
Yeah, it sounds like it's sort of your approach becomes more focused, and as you showed in your it was really nice, by the way, to see your sort of process sketches where you sort of revealed how you first, like I said, you don't let yourself get distracted by color, and you sort of extract things because you find that they're no longer necessary. So I guess it speaks to that as well, that it's a matter of sort of arriving at a point where you really look at what's necessary within a message, and rather than entertaining sort of trickery to a certain extent. Does that sort of make sense?
Yes, and I think also that there is a like a fork in the street, and you can, as illustrator, as professional in the creative field, not just as illustrator, you can decide to keep doing your homework, like the homework that are given to you, or you can decide to give yourself your homeworks. And that completely shifting in the paradigm, because it depends where you want to go. Like if you want to go in a different place, you have to do that. There is no way you can keep like doing homeworks given by other for like 40 years. I mean, you can do that because that's commercial illustration. That's a job that has a close connection with the market. But in, instead of like being called because you or another guy can fix the same problem, the same visual problem, probably the perspective is the company, the brand wants you, because, and not you or another 2 or 3 guys. They want you because they like the way just you can resolve that issue. And so in that moment, you can become, I'm not saying a master, because master is a big word, but you can have a strong identity, and you are going to last longer. Because if you stay too close to the market, at the very end, you get old pretty soon, because your style gets old, because like being trendy, like trend a peak, and then a valley, and because we have to make room for another generation. And talking about fashion, we have to make room for another model of trousers, shorter, longer, you know. So that's the thing. That's the thing for me.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sort of that tip. I think that's an important lesson, and that's going to lead me to a question that I was going to ask you later on, or actually at an earlier stage and skipped. I'm wondering, you've mentioned so not to be distracted by trends. Definitely agree with you that illustration sort of does welcome a lot of trends, and that a lot of illustrators are very distracted by that, and that also sort of results in people forgetting what the actual intention behind the work is, or what the message that they're trying to convey is. But are there any other tips that you might have for illustrators entering the industry? Anything else that they should be aware of, or things that that you think are quite important to keep in mind in going forward?
I think that they probably have to be okay feeling soft, and by soft I mean being distracted, especially at the beginning, by different styles. Maybe you can like super realistic style and super simple minimal style, and that's okay. And I think that the only way to suggest, the only way to understand what we like or what we don't like is to taste everything. And then you can say, oh, I really dislike pepperoni, or what, it's the same. So try to experiment a lot at the beginning, and well, not just at the beginning, but at a certain point, like, everyone has to focus and do and excel in one thing. So that's it, my only suggestion. And probably don't be too stuck and obsessed with the research of a style, because a style is just a way, just like a dress. So it doesn't really matter, and it can change, because again, talking about fashion, we don't. I have a black sweater. I had a black sweater for the last 10 years, and maybe I want to change in the future. I want a yellow one, or with stripes, or you don't know. So, like, what's important is the tone of voice, and that's what it's important also for the client at the very end.
All right. So I think, Micah, I'm going to steal your question.
Go for it.
Don't mind. I'm actually don't. This is a bit of a grand question, but what do you think the future of illustration holds? What possibilities do you see?
Well, that's a $3 million question. I don't know, because I really don't know. It's like asking, you think that in 20 years we are gonna still read newspaper on paper? I don't know. Like, maybe yes, maybe not. So I think that we are gonna need images more and more. Probably we're gonna need more tomorrow than today. I guess that we're gonna use, according to the technology, more animations, very small animation, like, illustration animated. Because I'm seeing already that magazines, newspaper are using a lot. So for example, I imagine an online platform where, like, you can buy a book looking at the cover, and like there's going to be an animation on the cover explaining a little the plot and something. So that's what I pictured in my mind, but maybe just fantasy. I don't know. But yeah, I guess that animation and illustration are going to be tied up together very much in the future.
Interesting. Yeah. Sure. Emiliano, I want to ask you one more thing. That would have been a very nice question to end off with, but I'm just going to sneak one last one in there. So you've spoken about how animation is definitely going to feature more in illustration. And I was going to ask about sort of your process that you follow when developing illustrations for online platforms. That could also, mean sort of GIFs that you develop, or particularly you spoke about the New Yorker project, the American West project, for example. And then obviously you still do a lot for print media. You've done things for Penguin books and so on. Is there a different process in terms of how you approach them? Do you have different sort of rules that you set yourself, or do you establish different, generally different approaches, or not really?
I think that the process is pretty much the same. What changed is the approach, because not what changes not like the difference between paper or online or animations, but what they want to communicate. So, for example, if the job is a magazine cover, I approach in a way, because it's supposed to be eye-catching, can be too narrative, stuff like that. If it's an inside image, I can draw more, because I can draw more details. I can it can be more narrative with smaller figures, less. I don't want to say less eye-catching, but I'd say less wow, impressive, something like that. Can be more whispered. And well, yes, just for animation, it changed a little bit, because working for animation, you have to deliver every piece on a single layer. So it's a longer process, and so we tend to, and also there's gonna be a guy like going crazy animating all the details that I draw. So I try to stay more simple than other projects.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I suppose it also speaks about you. It's nice that you touched on the design and concept thing that you also spoke about earlier, that sometimes your concept is bigger and sometimes the design is bigger, and that sort of relationship there. So it's nice that you linked it back to that. Great. Emiliano, thanks so much. I think you were so generous in terms of what you shared and the insights that you offered. I think that covers our questions. And I think you shared so much insight. And thanks for sharing some of your projects as well. It was lovely seeing, like I said, the behind the scenes, when it really gets to see that. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm just going to repeat.
Lovely.
I'm going to repeat these thank yous. It was so amazing to listen to you, and you were so generous with your knowledge and sharing about your process and approach. So thanks for starting us off like that. It was really nice to respond to your keynote as well. I hope that each of our students and viewers will develop their own magic formula, as you started off with, but not to get stuck there, because as you've mentioned, it's very important to continue to experiment and progress. But I'm sure all of our listeners tonight feel inspired until they also get to their perfect solutions too. So thank you once again. And I hope everyone enjoyed the discussion, and to all of our listeners and viewers, enjoy your evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
you.